Thank you for joining. So this is Thailand. I'm Valerie McKenzie. Sawadee ka.
I'm Johan Wimon Chalao. Swadee krap.
And I'm Tapani Manatwet. Sawadee ka.
Now, I just love the story on Thai Visa this week, and that is, why are straight Western men attracted to Thai ladyboys? Now, why?
Why are you looking at me?
I need an answer from you. You're the only guy on the set.
Well, my first reaction is because Thais, the physique of Thai men are so slim to begin with, that perhaps many Western men don't know. It could be an ignorance. I mean, they'll find out eventually, but do you have another take on the story?
The answer is
Actually,
no.
I have a feeling that some of the Thai ladyboys are actually even more beautiful,
Very
and
much.
they take such good care of themselves than normal girls, and they're also very refined and very effeminate in a lot of ways. So maybe you can't tell the difference.
Well, if you look at Tiffany's and Alcazar down in Pattaya, I mean, the girls are really, really stunning. And when we have these world championships every year, we do very well, not only with Thailand, but ladyboys from all around the world. But it was an interesting story because we still don't have the answer is why are straight men attracted?
Actually, I look at them and I get embarrassed.
Because they
I
look
get
so
ashamed
good.
because they look better than me.
On to the real thing, though. We probably should have discussed it earlier, but of course the Miss World, in fact, went to China this year. Zhu Wenjia, and Wales second, Sophia Moles third, Australia, Jessica Kahapati. Now that's not a Thai name, not an Australian name. Sounds actually more Thai than Australian, but a big event this year, as it always is, and a first for China.
She's really, really beautiful, but I think in the blogosphere, some Thais are still a little bit resentful from the gold medal going to China and just boycotting everything from China in general. So a lot of Thai people are, you know, saying, oh, the Chinese cheated again. And everything.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because, you know, we actually don't need to say anything like that. What we should say is, hey guys, we got silver. That's pretty impressive when you look at the world.
So we're not still talking about that.
It's unbelievable though, isn't it? I find it just amazing that we don't accept the fact that silver is fantastic. You know, you've got to be the second in the world. So forget everything that happened, you know, China were better than us on the day as far as the judges were concerned. And with the Miss World, she's very beautiful.
I actually had a chance to catch some of the competition, and I always enjoy looking at the audience just to see how the reactions are. And I don't know if you've ever seen, but Chinese audiences, they're really quite reserved. I mean, usually if you're in the West, you see a lot of people clapping and yelling and hooting for their favorite contestant. But when they panned over from the contestants looking at the audience, everyone was sitting very still, very composed, only clapping when the right moment appeared. So it's always interesting to see how different countries have a take on any type of competition.
Tara, it's really hard to believe, isn't it? He watches the audience. I mean, what a great story from a guy, you know?
It's a great cover.
What do we have as the talk of the town today, Tara?
Okay, in the news today, we'll start off with a little bit of business and charts and lots of number crunching. So this is a story from a very, very well-respected business newspaper, and it is breaking down a bit of research that shows how government taxes are being spent on the poor. I'm afraid that the numbers are not looking very good, and we'll summarize. The research has shown that the government policies which have been implemented to reduce poverty as part of their elections pledge have ended up benefiting the rich more than the poor. And in the overall picture, only 21% of the funds are going to the poor in general. Now, there's 7 schemes in the main. There's the People's Bank, the Village Fund, Scholarships, Pensions Fund, the Disability Fund, an Education Fund, and the Government Housing Schemes. Now, of these, the most equal program or the most equal government scheme of the lot is the Pensions Fund, and in there you find that only 19.6% of the funds is going to people who are classified as poor, as in living below the poverty line. Now, this is a 60 billion baht scheme. So 8 million people are entitled overall, and of those, only 1 million is really, really poor, as in earning less than 20,000 baht a year. And now the most unequal scheme then, on the other side of the scale, is the education fund, with only 0.2% of the money spent going to poor people. Now this is very, very sad, as you know that, well, with more education, they can lift themselves up and above the poverty line. So this is not painting a very, very bright picture at all of how the money is being spent. The study concluded then that in order to spread the wealth more equally, they should look into making direct transfer straight into bank accounts, which would make the schemes more fair and equal. Johan.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. Whenever I look at newspapers like this, it's easy to see when they make graphics like this, to look at, oh, there's a lot of blue there, the poor people being the orange part of the graph there.
Yes.
As you can see on here, very easily. But statistics, I always have to question, being from a math background, you always really have to look in context, where the number's coming from, exactly who's being included, what is the poverty line cutoff. Now, absolutely, there is a disparity between the rich and the poor in this country, and as you mentioned, education absolutely essential to bridge that gap. So hopefully, with highlighting this, people become more educated, and we can see that close.
Well, of course, if you're just looking at statistics, for example, if the cutoff point is at 20,000 baht, and anyone living below is classified as poor, what about people who are earning 21,000 baht, right? I mean, like, the statistics is just supposed to give you a general idea, but even still, like 20% of the funds going to poor people is pretty bad.
It is, especially since the majority of people in the country are I would consider as poor.
The other thing too is, that talks really to the rice farmers too. The average rice farmer is not making that per year. So, I wonder how many of those were surveyed. But for those of you watching the program that say, oh yes, but the pension scheme, if we go on to the pension scheme, it's always got to be a good idea. We do not have a pension scheme as such here. This is a new project that's actually come in. So overseas, when you actually live in a country, you pay taxes, and then at the end of your, when you get to retirement, you do get some pension. This has not been and has not been the case here. So it's something I think that has to be addressed fully, and particularly, I suppose, from many, many people in the country.
Well, this actually leads great into my next story, which we're covering taxis. Now, some of you may remember that back in May, the taxis held some protests about the hikes in CNG that the government was implementing. And actually, that program had been proposed in January through a gradual increase in the cost of CNG, 50 satang per kilogram of CNG over 12 months, so that by the end of 2012, it would reach 14.5 baht per kilogram. Now the taxis are once again coming back, the taxi drivers are coming back and saying, we really need help with this, because if you raise the price of CNG, obviously their operating costs are going up. They need help in terms of hikes in fares, looking at the specifications. I think we talked about this the other day about, can we get smaller engines or even get eco cars classified as okay to use as taxis as well. So the government agreed to set up a panel to discuss this issue, to look at, all right, what can we do here about easing the burden on the taxi drivers? And as Valerie, as you said, their income actually would classify them as the lower end of the income scale. So
very much so. And I think the other area to concern ourselves with is that the money that actually parts its way to the organisers and the under the table money too. I think that's another issue that has to be addressed. But this is all part of the development, and we'll just have to wait and see.
I somehow feel that eco cars is not going to be the complete answer to everything, as everyone always forgets that the eco cars run on batteries, which once they run out in 4 or 5 years are so expensive to replace. So CNG or LPG is in the long run the cheaper way to actually fuel up, if you can.
Absolutely, and just some statistics, just here in Bangkok there are over 100,000 taxis, car taxis, 200,000 motorcycle taxis, so it's a very large chunk. I mean, just look outside and you can see all the colors of the rainbow just queuing up there for passengers.
Well, never when it rains. You can never get a taxi when it rains. Right, on to the next story, which is about roads, and our street lights are going to be replaced and maintained according to the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority. They're carrying out works on the 10 main roads as well as Ratanakosin area. This includes general maintenance, painting of overpasses, and redoing footbridges and things like that. It's certainly great news for people who are traveling on foot when they do get maintained and scrubbed up a bit. This is going to cover 162 kilometers so far. Half of the project has been completed. And they're also discussing putting the service lines around Ratanakosin area in front of the equestrian statue, Sanam Chai Road and Khao San Road. They're going to put the service lines underground, which is great news.
Absolutely.
So start in the right direction. Huh?
Yeah, I actually voted someone for Bangkok governor based on the sole policy that he was going to put all the lines underground. I think it's great. It clears up the pavement. Sometimes once you clear up the pavement, the shopping carts take over. So I don't know how beneficial it is in general, but it's very, very dangerous. Some of those lines are so old.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you get really scared.
It's like a bird's nest out there. I mean, there's actually been some incidents in the past where foreigners have been electrocuted because there's exposed wires, it rains, there's a puddle.
Right.
Not just foreigners, by the way.
Not just foreigners.
Not just foreigners. That's what we hear about.
Yes.
Yeah, so those works are being carried out. It's 83% complete so far, so not long to wait. And yeah, it's great news.
Absolutely. Well, this last story, if any of you are eating, I suggest you put down your fork or your knife. This is actually a good story, but one where the images you're going to see on the screen can be a little disturbing. The great news is Thailand is going to have its own body world. Now, if any of you are familiar with this, it was begun by Dr. Gunther von Hagens from Germany, where they take, basically they've taken cadavers and replaced all the fluids and tissues with a plastic rubber substitute. And so they're able to show these types of anatomically correct people in different poses, looking at the organs. It's great for people to understand about human biology. It's also great for students who are learning about medicine. And people have donated their bodies for the advancement of science. It's a great thing. Have you ever seen it, Valerie?
I have, in fact, and I actually must say I don't like it personally. But I have to say that it does the job, and I think it's a great step forward again.
This is an exhibition that has traveled all around the world, hasn't it? And it's been to Bangkok once before. I didn't get a chance to catch it, but very, very interesting. And I think that sometimes they say that from a Buddhist perspective, once you have a look at these bodies, and you're kind of able to let go of some of the grievances about wrinkles and
the inhibitions
things like
that
because yeah, that's basically.
Well, for those of you who are interested in seeing this, it's at Chulalongkorn University in the Faculty of Dentistry. They actually invested 1.2 million baht into transforming 2 of their halls into a display just for these body world. So it's a great opportunity for people here, whether you're a student, whether you're a visitor, whether you're an expat, to go and see it as well.
Coming up after the break, we're going to be having Johan talk about spas. Now, many of you have written in and asked us whether a spa is safe to go to. How do you judge which is a good spa to go to? What are the rules and regulations of the spa industry? When I have a massage, what part of the body should they touch, what they shouldn't touch? And also some other issues that you should be concerned with. Stay tuned, we'll be back very shortly.